Ugliness is a disease that not only inhabits the objects that we create, but those who create them, as well as those who consume them or observe them. As a great lover of beauty, I feel that it is my duty to show you how some things in the material world, no matter how innocuous they may seem, have the power to harm us. The current rise of ugly objects symbolizes and inaugurates a secession from a life of beauty, and causally mars us as people. I feel that beauty has lost its place among virtue, goodness, and basic necessities. It is my philosophy that it would be a cowardly world if we could not condemn ugliness, or if we looked upon beauty as some kind of luxury. We should never feel that we do not deserve or that we cannot afford beauty. So I implore everybody to be brave, to be critical, make the sacrifice, and denounce visually offensive things, asking for beautiful ones in their place. The visually offensive creation that we are going to analyze today and denounce is going to be Tesla's infamous Cybertruck. Ugliness of the thing. I am happy that most people have publicly mocked this vehicle, making Tesla into a little bit of a laughingstock. Though we may know instinctively that something is ugly, we need to be able to explain why it is in order to condemn it. You need to know the name and nature of your enemy, right? The Cybertruck is a 6,600-pound electric lightweight pickup. The design was inspired by the DeLorean from Back to the Future. It has sentimental and nostalgic value, and it has underperformed and undersold ever since, despite a little blip in 2024. Now, I am not a mechanic, okay? But I am a design and art enthusiast, and I also went to school for design. My field of study is branding, conceptual design, creative direction, and art. So I'm going to be coming at it from a design art standpoint. We are going to be talking about how this car looks, how that affects us, in tandem with how it functions a little bit for context. From what I have read mechanically, it's fine. But its design, 8 recalls, and low quality construction have made people forget about that very quickly. It is very fortunate that this was not their first design when launching their fleet of electric vehicles. The first thing that I thought when I saw the Cybertruck is that it looks like it's still in the preliminary stages of its design, like a prototype of a prototype. So clay models, as you may know, are standard for prototypes of vehicles, and there's these very nice videos of people carving away at the clay in order to make a curvaceous looking car. But whenever I look at the Cybertruck, I can't help but see that squat square of clay, and they just kind of said, chop, chop, throw some wheels on there, brutalist. It doesn't feel like there's anything designed about it. And there is a famous quote about design by Dieter Rams: "Good design is as little design as possible." However, unlike a car that is elegant, streamlined, minimal, stripping away what is not necessary, with the Cybertruck, it evokes something rudimentary, not elegant. The difference being that the designer of the former is experienced or seems experienced, while the other comes off as a novice who plays too much Minecraft. The second point is going to be coming from a branding perspective. The Cybertruck looks starkly different from the rest of the Tesla vehicles. And yes, I know that every model will be different from every car manufacturer. They're not all going to look the same. I mean, a G-Wagon does not look like an S-Class, okay? But there should be some familiarity there, some unifying feature, a detail, a feeling, a brand, a noticeable brand. The Cybertruck should be Tesla-esque. The only reason that we know that it's Tesla and not a competitor's vehicle is because the car is the butt of a bad joke. They do not look like they are made from the same company, and you wouldn't even think that they were designed by the same person. But they are. With, however, a lot of input from Elon this time around. Now here are some other tips that I have with the design. Insanely large windshield, but the angle of it apparently makes visibility through it pretty terrible. You have this insanely large singular windshield wiper, which reportedly had enough issues to be one of the reasons the Cybertruck had a recall. So instead of actually providing more visibility, which you would think was very important when driving a car, It reduces what you can see. The truck doesn't do what trucks are supposed to do. It promised to outdo the top selling trucks in the industry at the time, and they launched underperforming on payload and towing capacity, and then they were grossly overpriced by almost $30,000. Apparently, also the truck bed is inconvenient to access. It's not it just doesn't seem like that vehicle is meant to be what it was intended to be. I also want to rehash something very quickly. The Cybertruck, like I said earlier, was recalled 8 times. Recalls are expensive, sometimes billions of dollars per recall. Now, I don't think Tesla sold nearly enough Cybertrucks for it to be billions each time, but 8 recalls that significantly impacted their sales. I mean, panels from the body were falling off and the windshield wiper wasn't working correctly. I mean, basic things in a vehicle were just poor quality. And it makes sense that after all of that, they started charging an extra $15,000 more per truck because they had to probably pay for all of those recalls. Lastly, size isn't really a point of contention when it comes to trucks. I mean, there's massive pickups that I adore, even for being like ridiculously souped up, okay? It's the use of the size that bothers me with this. It's careless misuse of space and far more material than it needs for the design to be great, okay? It just feels wasteful. Also, it's so massive too that it cannot be sold in Europe. This impacted their international sales because it does not comply with certain pedestrian laws. Also, brutalism doesn't have to be monumental in size and rigid and weirdly pointy. It can be sleek too, and faceted, compact, and God forbid, have curves. The Cybertruck is a car that looks like a misunderstanding or limited knowledge of its inspiration. It looks rudimentary. Ugliness of the creator. People should not laugh when they see a car. They should not mock it or feel like it ruined their day by seeing it. But why do so many of us who are, I guess, not tolerant of this design feel the way that we do? What does the Cybertruck say whenever it's driving down the street? What does it scream, really? Now, this is purely speculation and theory on my part. But from what I see, I'd say it screams a few things: amateur, arrogant, and foolish. Not that Elon is those things normally, but it seems like his romance with some kind of vision that he had clouded his better judgment, which is not a good thing. That's a terrible quality to have, especially since the Cybertruck was in the works for many years, like over a decade. Elon was significantly involved with the design of the truck, working next to Tesla's OG designer, Franz von Holzhausen. When I see the Cybertruck plodding down the street, I see a pipe dream of a 12-year-old boy who was too wrapped up in the brilliance of his own idea to sacrifice his own ego to make the car look less ludicrous. Elon is literally had been, I guess, for years, blind to the fact that this car is ridiculous and makes a fool out of him. The Tesla Cybertruck is not some kind of cutting-edge design that shocks us and will have some kind of cult following in 20 years dedicated to exposing it as some overlooked marvel, okay? It's a failure. The vehicle itself is a boastful first draft that is presented as a final product. It is a result, certainly not of a lack of time, but too much pride and an initial dream to take a second look at it with, or a thousand, to just look at the final product and say, this is wrong, to look at it with sober eyes. It screams gold star for participation, pat on the back for trying, a mediocre athlete's mother saying, oh, isn't my child so naturally gifted? I think all the time to myself when I see them that how could something like this pass through so many hands without somebody having an intervention and saying, look, I don't care what anybody else thinks, but like, can somebody else please tell me that I'm not crazy when I look at this thing and think that this should not go to production. This should not be on the street. That this is just bad design. How? Oh, did anybody say anything? I want to know who held their breath this whole time. Also, sorry about, I have this crazy lighting thing going on. I have a stained glass above my head, so now I'm turning yellow. That's why. The sun is just like hitting it at a certain angle. Like I said, they've been talking about building the Cybertruck for a long time, since 2012, okay? This has been in the works for a while. So whether it took maybe so long for it to come to be created, maybe it was Weary Eyes. Weary Eyes was the culprit. They were just like, oh my God, just get this thing on the road, right? Whether it was that or the original idea was just simply untouchable, it is a case of blindness on Elon's part. He refused to see what was there. Ugliness of the consumer or society. A vehicle like this needs to be shot down and publicly ridiculed, and a lot of us have done our job, okay? But this vehicle was anticipated. Apparently almost 1 million people wanted that car. That seems like very overshot, just to get people hyped about it. But I don't doubt that like a lot of people wanted it, like a lot. And those people knew what it looked like. They bought it anyway, or they reserved one anyway. So what I say to that is, a car like that can only come from a society that permits it, or better yet, represents it. And it follows as a kind of vicious cycle. Awful society, awful creation. Awful society, awful creation. We consume and then create that. In today's world, especially the Western one, subjectivity reigns. With postmodern thought, there has never been a more widely accepted prioritization of one's self, one's own truth, one's personal history, and their own culture. Such behaviors impact our social bonds as well as what we create too. The Cybertruck, looking the way that it does, signifies to us that this kind of a vehicle is permissible. We created it. The society we live in created a vehicle like that. Like, we didn't actually create it, but you know what I mean. With enough money and effort, apparently, a poorly executed vision can be coveted, at least for a little while. I mean, think about Labubu and Crocs and Stanley Cups. The success of so many mediocre, repetitive content creators, for example, too, tells others that mediocre and conventional ideas can give them fame and an income. They can make a living. It is the glorified self, fueled by passive people, tolerant algorithms too, that clouds one's better judgment. The moment where one is supposed to consider that what they are doing is undignified never comes to pass. When creating something of worth, whether it's art or a reel on Instagram or a car, sometimes you have to scrap it, start all over, okay? You gotta take your ego out of the equation. So many times with my own artwork or even a video, sometimes I get hung up on like a sentiment, an idea, and I push it unnaturally to fruition, and it turns out awful every time. And it's terrible too, because you're looking at, let's say it's a drawing or something, or a painting. You look at it and you're like, your ego is telling you all sorts of horrid lies and justifications to try and change the fact that in your gut, you know, this is a piece of shit. There's a reason why you got to step away from an artwork a lot of the time. You need to listen to your gut. You got to get something right, you know? Like, you can't be patting yourself on the back and being like, oh, this is fine. Like, this is good for now. No. You got to trust that you know better, or develop that trust. Develop that intuition, that gut instinct where you can't let yourself be made a fool out of by yourself. I believe the flaw in modern creativity is holding subjectivity as gospel. And while I am a staunch individualist, okay? I mean by that, it's putting yourself and your ego and pride over the potential for a better result. That is not real individualism. The individual has like a very, very strong sense of what is right and what is wrong for them. They don't pat themselves on the back. They know when they have to work harder, and they know when they're satisfied. This is the caveat. You are sometimes wrong. That is the caveat of being selfish per se, or taking that journey inward, is that sometimes you are wrong. Your word is not the law. Some things you do are bad, and you have to try harder. The idea, the sentiment, the thought is not all that counts. Do you guys remember that art piece called Comedian by Maurizio Catalan, that banana taped to a wall. I was reading an article yesterday, I'll link it below. They were saying that this banana, and it being sold to some kind of cryptocurrency billionaire, introduced the concept that art doesn't need to be a physical manifestation of one's thoughts and feelings, but rather an idea. This banana says, I'm an idea. I'm untouchable. Another example, tell me how The Weeknd can produce something. And this is coming from a die-hard Weeknd fan. Okay, I used to be, not anymore. But how can he produce something as embarrassing as The Idol, that series on HBO, and not think for a second that it was almost intolerable? Not to take a step back and realize that the hairbrush beating scene, if you've watched this, you know what I'm talking about. Him raising up the hairbrush like a fucking samurai sword. I about never wanted to ever look at Abel or listen to any of his music ever again after I saw that. And she's screaming in pain like that. That is a selfishness and pride that refuses to see a flaw in one's own work. And to be even indignant, he had the nerve to tell people at press conferences, like it's some cutting edge thing. The fact that Abel doesn't know the difference between something that is brilliant and is just not accepted yet and something that's genuinely bad is a huge problem. That is conceit. No, the banana is not art. Okay, I'll say that right now. The Idol was trash, and the Cybertruck is a terrorist attack on good taste. All three of these examples show that clearly the creators had their head up their ass. And they serve as examples. They're industry professionals. They get the work out there. The work influences people. These creations teach gullible people that even so subconsciously, that poor taste in design, mediocre ideas posing as profound is acceptable and even will make you money, okay? An idea is perfect if it never manifests in the real world. I learned this from Immanuel Kant. To bring it to the world gives it the ability to be judged. But today we're afraid of judgment. So even if the idea makes it to the physical world, we still look at it blindly or like it can't be judged. Subjectivity also carries that airtight lack of ridicule that the idea does. You can simply say today, it's my taste, it's my opinion, and I like it. But people very rarely will explain to you why they like something. They have a very hard time doing that, okay? Why do they owe you an explanation? There's a feeling of entitlement there. They say, they think that it's sufficient just to say like, oh, I like it and that's end all be all. Subjectivity embraces the ultimate ends to any argument on what is good or bad, it kills anything good. Any good art. You need proofs. You need people to tell you if something is good or bad. Not everybody's opinion is worth it, okay? But you need people with merit telling you whether or not, you are really running off course. You need to be your own worst critic. Can't be slack with yourself. You can't look at a bad work of art or any object, let's say, pat yourself on the back because you tried, or try and convince yourself of its worth. Deep down, you should know if something is wrong and if your work needs some serious revision. A phrase so often heard today is like, be gentle with yourself. Maybe like 10% of the time. That is a killer of dignified creation. The same leniency, this might be controversial for me to say, the same leniency that is associated with self-care is a mirror image of the tyrant narcissist who thinks his idea and all of his ideas are gold. Two sides of the same claustrophobic self-coddling. So, what do we get? We have cars like the Cybertruck. When this monstrosity rolls down the street, all I can see is someone who could not come face to face with a failure, which is alarming. Someone who, after so much hard work to build their empire, has nearly destroyed it because of his ignorances. The Cybertruck is one thing, political leanings and other things aside, okay? This car and those who insisted that this thing be put into production, that this thing was viable, that it deserved to be on the street with other cars, signify to us that it doesn't matter what it looks like. It could be a circus on wheels, but hey, at least you got it out there. At least it was a cool idea. It worked in theory, am I right? I feel like I'm ranting. I don't even know how to end this anymore. But okay, I'll do this. A dying civilization excuses ugliness excuses something like the Cybertruck or is passive in the face of it. Do not. The Cybertruck made a coward of Elon, okay? Made him a fool. But do not let such a thing make a coward out of you too.